Okay, we are live on another edition of the Edlow Podcast. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. I am in no mood to do this, but we are going to do it anyway because that's what we do, right? We keep pushing through. At least that's what I've heard. But we have a lot to talk about. The reason I'm doing another Just Me podcast is because I have been following. I know I got a lot of wrestling fans who listen to this podcast, and one of the things that I found very interesting as a wrestling fan and as an attorney, it is that I've been interested in the Vince McMahon lawsuit saga, and so we're here to talk about that. And there has been some developments. So the last time that we spoke about this, Vince McMahon had filed a motion to compel arbitration. And as part of that motion to compel arbitration, he issued a preliminary statement, which is not normal. It is not common in a motion to compel arbitration for the contents of what was in the preliminary statement to be there. And which the preliminary statement was essentially a response to the complaint that Janelle Grant's attorneys filed, detailing in excruciating detail some of the claims of Vince McMahon's power and control over the plaintiff. And so in response to the motion to compel arbitration, Janelle Grant's attorney filed what is called a motion to strike. And they wanted to strike from the record the preliminary statement. So because they were saying it was improper and unnecessary, which I believe is true. However, I would also like to say that it was not necessary for them to put the level of detail in the complaint that they did when they filed their complaint. There was clearly an element there of trying to get media coverage, which it worked. Well, since that motion to strike, Vince McMahon's team has responded and claimed that the motion to strike was meritless and described it as the height of hypocrisy for the reasons I stated just a minute ago. Saying, well, they want to put all of this stuff out there about Vince McMahon in a complaint that wasn't necessary, and now they're upset because they responded in kind. You can take that for what you will. That's just part of the argument. Now you could so what is this response that they're doing? They're opposing the motion to strike the preliminary statement, and so they submitted a 16-page memorandum requesting that the motion to strike be denied. And part of I'll read some of the statement for you so you can understand what's going on. So this is all really just legal mumbo jumbo, legal gamesmanship because it's out there. There's nothing new. There's nothing that a motion to strike is going to do in the public eye. It's just going to be stricken from the record of the court. But regardless, this is what the response was from Vince McMahon's attorney. Plaintiff chose to violate the parties' explicit agreement to preserve the confidential and private nature of any dispute that may arise by commencing this lawsuit. You may recall that this all has to do with a non-disclosure agreement signed by both parties, that in exchange for $3 million that Janelle Grant would not disclose the nature of their relationship. And some of that language right there, preserving the confidential and private nature of any dispute, is what the issue here is here. It says, and then it goes on to say, ignoring her obligations to keep the nature of their relationship or the dispute private, the complaint unnecessarily includes private sexual text messages from defendant without including any of plaintiff's responses to those texts. Responses which are equally and often more aggressive and provocative than defendant's communications and show not only that the relationship was consensual, but also that in many instances, the plaintiff was the initiator. Now, so essentially, Vince McMahon's team is saying, hey, she was a willing partner and often the aggressor. And so moving on, it also says, defendant's communications show not only that the relationship was consensual, but also that in many instances, the plaintiff was the initiator. Indeed, while defendant no longer is in possession of the text messages between the parties, as he deleted them when he broke off the relationship, the discovery in this case will show that plaintiff sent him sexually explicit images of herself and texted him to say, among other things, here's the list of some of the things that she said, that she was in love with him and he was the love of her life, that he was her best friend, that she wanted to have sex with him and provided graphic detail, that she fantasized about being held down, enjoyed being in pain, and wanted rough sex, that she wanted defendant to watch her have sex with other people and know about her sex with others, that she wanted defendant to give her thousands of dollars for clothes, plastic surgery, and other gifts, that she wanted to have a future with defendant even after signing the agreement, and that she wanted defendant to keep living in the same building so she could continue to see him even after signing the agreement. Plaintiff sent messages like this to defendant through the entire duration of the relationship, including through the time they signed the agreement in January 2022. Plaintiff presumably still has all of these text messages, but she did not include them in her publicly filed complaint because she wanted to paint a distorted, false picture. So, those are some pretty salacious claims. And this, the plot thickens. And again, as I said in my last Just Me podcast, this is why the jury instructions say that you should not make any determination as to who is guilty until you've heard both sides of the argument. Now, I want to say to everybody who's listening to this, because I know there's going to be some people out there that are going to say, see, look, she's just money hungry and she's all these things. Okay. I just want to say that there is certainly, whether she was a quote unquote willing participant or not, there is still a great power disparity between these two that should not be ignored. There was still a quid pro quo relationship within the WWE that Vince McMahon fostered, which should be remembered regardless if she was a willing participant in these things or not. And that really, this does not change, it should not change really your view of whether of Vince McMahon's character in these situations. Remember that, this is all going on while his kids are working for him, particularly his daughter, his son-in-law, presumably his grandkids are around. Those are pretty serious, things. And on top of that, also, he is the most powerful person in wrestling, and he's using that position of power to give somebody clout within the organization simply based on a sexual relationship. It's just not appropriate, even if she is a consenting party, which I don't know. For all, it is also very convenient that he doesn't have the text messages, but she does. You're telling me that they signed an NDA. He had her sign an NDA at the end of the relationship, and then he deleted all the text messages that would protect him from her claiming that there was some sort of non-consensual relationship going on. That just doesn't seem, Vince McMahon is one of the smartest guys out there. That just doesn't seem like something someone like him, who also is very seasoned in this particular thing, would do. So I find it very interesting. We will, and there was a response when reached out for statement. Janelle Grant's lawyer, Ann Callis, stated, for any comment, see our original filing. We're confident the truth is laid out well there. So they're sticking to their original complaint. I don't know what to make of this. I don't know what to think. As far as all of these things are going into what are relatively benign and routine filings that the normal person would probably not be interested at all. In fact, a normal lawyer wouldn't be interested in these things either. But they keep attaching these salacious statements to each one of these things, each one of these mundane filings. And it makes it very interesting. So I am one who thinks, most cases settle. I hope this is one that doesn't. I hope it goes all the way to, and I hope it doesn't go to arbitration. I hope it goes to a jury trial that will have cameras and reporters there so we can hear what exactly did go on. And so anyhow, so that is the Vince McMahon saga. And a lot of fun. A lot of fun to follow. We'll see as it develops. Now, the other thing I want to do, this will be a relatively short one. I've had a lot of stuff going on. I've had a couple of messages of people asking me about my trip with Lexi. I know people have been following on social media my trips with my children, and I can tell you that that it was a special trip. My daughter had a great time. She was having so much fun. For those of you who don't follow on social media, I took my daughter. She's 13. She wanted to see Melanie Martinez, who is quite frankly, the weirdest artist I've seen in a long, long time. I didn't know who she was really, other than I remember seeing her on The Voice years and years and years ago. But my daughter really took to her, and she wanted to go see her. And so I bought tickets to see her at the Forum in LA. And it was a Christmas present. So we got front row seats, and we made a weekend of it. And we left on Sunday. We left on Mother's Day, and we went down and we ate at Medieval Times, which is always fun. We had a great time. And then we did 2 days of Disneyland. And at Disneyland, what I would recommend for people who are following, or people who want to do something novel, there were a couple of things that we did as like kind of experience things that I would highly recommend. The first being, there was a thing you can do called the dessert party for the World of Color. And it was so much fun. We got there a little bit early. You actually get a seat, and they just serve you a ton of dessert and cheese. And you get to watch the World of Color while you're eating junk food. And it was like really nice. We sat there. It was a nice little daddy-daughter date together, and watched the World of Color, which is always a wonderful show at California Adventure. And then the other thing, we went to the Blue Bayou, which is right there in the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. Always a fun experience. I wouldn't recommend you do it if you have little kids. I just don't think that little kids would enjoy it as much. First of all, there's a very limited menu, not a lot of kid choices there. And also the ambiance isn't really conducive to young kids. If you want to get the food but not be at the Blue Bayou, or you can't get reservations, right across the way is Cafe Orleans, and they have the same menu, so you can go there as well. But anyway, we had a great time doing that. And then the other thing is for the first time ever, I did a Main Street tour. And as part of the Main Street tour, we actually got to go inside Walt Disney's apartment. And that was a pretty nostalgic thing. It was pretty cool. So we did that. We were there for 2 days. We got everything done. I got 4 kids, and I can tell you that going one-on-one to Disneyland, you can move around so much faster than if you're pulling 4 people with you. And, it was a great experience there. And my daughter Lexi is the biggest Disneyland nerd in the world. She watches YouTube videos about all this stuff. She was looking for hidden Mickeys everywhere. So that was pretty cool. And then after that, we did a Warner Brothers tour, or studio tour. And that was actually really cool too, to go on the sets of movies that you've seen. We got to see the pet store from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. We got to see lots of places where Friends and Big Bang Theory were recorded. We got to see where Spider-Man was filmed, and just a ton of, where Newsies was filmed, a ton of different movies. And then we got to take pictures near the fountain for friends and in Central Perk and different places like that. So that was pretty cool. We had a good time there. And then of course we saw Melanie Martinez, and that was quite an experience. Definitely taking some psychedelics, I think, that one. So it was a great time. Unfortunately, there were some external circumstances that kind of, put a damper on the situation. And, it seems to happen. And, unfortunately, those things, they did affect my ability in ways to show up for my daughter. But at the end, she was just really grateful that we were able to have that time, and she said it was one she was never going to forget. And that really I really appreciated that, because I don't know quite frankly. I often, sorry, it's been a rough couple of weeks, and it's been, my mind isn't necessarily quite right. Um, uh, anyway, I sometimes question how well I'm really doing. I get a lot of external validation from friends and loved ones that I really appreciate. But for some reason, I mean, I know some of the reasons. I struggle believing it. And that hit pretty hard this last little while. And so it was really nice to hear my daughter say she was always going to remember it, because I want to do right by them. And I try so hard to do right by these kids. I put so much effort in. And so anyhow, and so with that, so that the whole trip was a ton of fun. We were laughing a lot. We goofed around a lot. Our tour guide, it was hilarious. Our tour guide on the Warner Brothers tour, apparently most of the tour guides are aspiring actors, and we got one who was like big into like like D-list horror movies, which I thought was really great. And so it was just hilarious. So, Lexi being a big theater nerd, I made a big point when we were there. I really appreciated what she said, because I started asking questions, because, Lexi, I don't want to go too far into her, her insecurities and stuff, but I know that sometimes she thinks she's a little strange because she's so into theater and stuff like that. And, theater kids are goofy and weird. And I really appreciated our person, because our tour guide, because I asked her, I said, hey, you're in Hollywood. Tell me, like, theater kids sometimes get a bad rap. How many of these A-listers were theater kids at one time? And she was like, oh, almost all of them. And I said, well, that's really interesting, because when I was when I was growing up in the 90s, I thought about wanting to do theater, but I just looked at the kids and I thought they were really, really weird. And I didn't want to really be a part of that. And I was like, and I just think it's kind of cool that, these theater kids who are looked at least in my time, were kind of looked at as nerds or weird or not great. Not great, I shouldn't say that, but I mean, like, they just were a little strange, that they ended up becoming like the most famous people in the world and have something really amazing to contribute. And so I think that was good for her to hear, but so yeah, great trip. We had a good time. Anyhow, now here's I wanted to, the last thing I'm going to do, and like I said, this is going to be a little bit of a shorter one. You know, I occasionally get messages from listeners, and I like to highlight them on these just me's. And this was one I just wanted to thank this listener for hitting me in the feels. So I'll read this message I received. It says, they essentially said, hold on, let me find the right, let's see here. It says, there's been a lot of ups and downs in the last year and a half, but you are one of the treasures that I've discovered. From your podcast to your weekend adventures with your kids, you are a true inspiration. And then went on to say, in response to something I said, I wish I had something uplifting to share with you, because you have no idea literally how many rough days you have pulled me out of just through your podcast. I'm talking about really rough stuff. I often contemplate swerving into the oncoming lane and just ridding everyone of the charity case that is me. I would never do it because the other drivers don't deserve their day ruined. But then just listening to your podcast reminds me that I'll be all right. I'm really stuck right now spiritually. I need something I can depend on to hold me accountable to myself. Your show and your guests help me deal with my own issues on the regular without even knowing it. I call it therapy, but it's even better than that. So please accept that you're good so I can sleep well tonight. That came at an incredibly important time for me. I understand exactly how you're feeling. I sometimes struggle with knowing if I'm doing the right thing. I struggle a lot with knowing whether or not I'm doing right by the people around me. I struggle a lot, and a lot of it is external. A lot of it is because of people telling me things that I just know isn't true. But when someone knows how to tap into your insecurities and hit you right where it hurts, all because they're in pain, it's really a struggle. So I appreciate it, because quite frankly, I was thinking about not even doing this podcast anymore. Literally probably 15 minutes before I got this message. Because it's just, I don't know, man. It's hard. This life, it's hard. It's hard because like it just seems like there's so much, like I get mad sometimes, I don't know. I don't like getting this vulnerable on this thing because I'm always the motivation guy, but I want you to know that it's not always there. You know what I mean? It's okay to be down every once in a while, There are days when I get mad at God, like when other people do things to you to hurt you and you're looking around and you're going like, what did I do to deserve this? I didn't do anything. Like all I did was try to do the right thing, or you just out of the blue, you're you're in the middle of LA and you get a phone call and you're like, you're kidding me. But, things are going on at home. You got to figure it out. And, you just, and when you have somebody over there saying things about you that are just, I don't know, not who you are as a person, it's a struggle. And so anyway, I'm pulling the wool back way too much, or the curtain back way too much. But I wanted to say this because I want you to know that, I know one of the things I struggle with a lot is I know who I am and I know that I achieve and I know I will be okay. I know I will get through. I know that I will continue to excel because that is how it's always been. It has always been that way. Every morning I get up and I just do it again, no matter what happens. So I know that I'm going to continue to do that. And I know, and I think there's a tendency out there that other people see that. And they think, wow, how motivational, and think that guy doesn't need the help. And they focus on the other people who wear their victimhood as a badge of honor. And that is something that I do not do. I've been victimized, but I don't share it because that's not who I am. I don't identify that way. And so, buddy, I know you're going through some really rough stuff, and I know that you have those intrusive thoughts. What I would tell you is that there's always tomorrow. And just know that there are people out there who would be devastated if you were not here. And so, thank you very much for the message coming at the exact right time. I will continue to do this podcast for you and others like you, because all I want to do is help. All I want to do is highlight that we're all going through something. And so, now, this is not supposed to be some woe is me, Josh is sad, I don't need a bunch of messages wondering if I'm okay. I'm okay. I'll be fine. Always am. But I think it's nice every once in a while to be real and let people hear that they're in between the pictures and videos and things that I put out there. There is other stuff that goes on. It's not always perfect. I'll close with an experience, and I shared a similar analogy, but it really hit me while I was in Disneyland, actually California Adventure. So Lexi and I, we get in there and we did Guardians of the Galaxy first shot. And right after we got through Guardians of the Galaxy, she wanted to ride the Incredicoaster, which is the biggest roller coaster in the park. And I'm not a big fan of that roller coaster. It always just kind of, if I've just eaten, I can't ride it. I'll get sick. But, it was early in the morning, so we get on it and we get going. And this thing just shoots you all over the place, up, down, around, all over. And it feels like it's going 100 miles an hour. And as that was going on in my head, I started thinking about all of the stuff. I've had a lot of stuff going on in these last 5 years that are just incredibly hurtful. And I think that there's been a level of this that because I am so determined to get through it and power through that I maybe haven't processed all of it quite yet. And so as I'm out there, I start thinking about all of these things and getting really upset. And not upset, but I mean, like I started, I was upset. And I started thinking about this is exactly what life is like. There's ups and downs, there's twists and turns. You feel happy and sad, frightened and afraid. It'll make you super excited one second and then make you feel like you're going to throw up the next. And there are times, and there was on that ride, where I was like, I want off this ride. And there have been times in my life when I've said that this is not what I want. I want out. But then we got off the ride, and I looked at my daughter and how excited she was, and I thought about my family. And I think about these experiences that I've had, and I'm looking right now, my phone is right in front of me, and I have a picture of my daughter inside Walt Disney's apartment, staring right back at me. And I think about her, and I think about my other kids. I think about my son graduating high school, all my kids. I can't help but be thankful for this roller coaster. When you're in it, when you're in the thick of it, it's real easy to get buried by the negativity. And listen, I am that person. There were moments in the last couple of weeks that I have been unconsolable as far as I had a couple of friends I was messaging, and they were just saying all the right things, the things that I would say to somebody else, and I was not having it. Not in a good place. But I am telling you, if you're in a place that you're in one of those bad places, you're not in your right mind and you can't see outside of the dark, just know that there are brighter days ahead. There are. There always is something to be grateful for. And I'm grateful for these, for this podcast, for my friends who reached out. Just grateful, So that's it. 30 minutes, quick and easy. Every time I go on one of these vacations, it's real hard for me to keep up with the podcast because I'm out, running around and doing things. But keep listening. We got more stuff to come, and we will talk to you later.